All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mads channel. It's Maddie here. Today, we're going to highlight the best decks for ranked battles. Now, this ranked season was delayed, but I think we have, about a week left of this ranked season. It's been an interesting season in general. I think that things are changing, slightly. Like, it's a weird thing because, I don't know how many people are necessarily competing in tournaments as much as they were early in the season, but there's been a complete swap around of the decks that have been viable, and it's happened like 2 or 3 times this season, which I think is pretty interesting. So regardless, if you guys have been playing ranked battles this season for Pokemon Pocket, you probably have some idea of what decks are seeing play, but these are the decks that I would recommend here for at least the next few days, likely the next week. But this weekend is PMPT number 28, and I would definitely recommend that you guys go and register. This is going to be the last PMPT tournament of the season. That's right, this is your last chance to qualify for the Invitational Tournament, which will be next weekend, and we will have some information about that. So tomorrow, on April 18th, PMPT number 28, link to register down in the description below. Also, we've been uploading to the Champion Mads channel, so if you have any interest in Pokemon Champions, go check that out. Okay. Long intro, but let's get right into it. A lot of the decks that you're going to see in today's video, you've seen before in some renditions. There are some updates to the deck lists, and again, I just want to quickly touch on why some decks are maybe better right now than other decks, right? Kind of a quick kind of meta synopsis, or I don't know, what's the word? Who knows? This will be a quick one today. The first one's Darktina and Darkrai. Now, Darktina Darkrai hasn't really become that popular of a deck list over the last few seasons, but it's seen some play. Basically, throughout this week in online tournaments, it's been very successful, very, very consistent. I think that ranked right now, you're going to see probably 6 or 7 decks more than like anything else by a wide margin. And I don't think that Darktina Darkrai is going to be one of them. And that's why I think that this is a really, really strong pick. If you take a look at its results in tournaments over the past week, it's been performing very well, at least in the limited amount of play that it's seen. I think that it has a really decent matchup spread across virtually everything, whether it's Sleep Scam, whether it's the lightning type decks with Manectric, or it's Suicune and Chien-Pao. This is a deck that I actually think is very well positioned into most things right now in the metagame. Not only that, but some of the fire type decks like Charizard or the heavy hitter decks, so many of the top tier meta decks right now are playing Mega Pokemon, and Darktina Darkrai seems to be one of those counter Mega Pokemon type decks. With Giant Cape, with Starting Plains, all of our Pokemon are living hits, and basically we're going to 2-hit KO a Mega Pokemon and win the game, and that's what this deck is really all about. I think a big reason why Darktina Darkrai has been a little bit more relevant right now is because most of the meta isn't that fast. Like, it's kind of a weird thing. If you look at like the grand scheme of, the amount of damage that typically happens throughout Pokemon Pocket games, we used to kind of be in that 120 to 140 range, like for a very long time, but now things are different. Like, you have Manectric that's hitting you on turn 2 for 80 damage. You've got, Charizard that's just 1-hit KOing your Pokemon, and then you've got some stuff that hits a little bit higher, like Scizor can hit high, Bellibolt can hit high up into like the 150, 160 range, and then you of course still have all of those Pokemon like Suicune, like Chien-Pao, like Altaria that hit for like 130. But when you crunch all of those numbers, like Darktina, Darkrai, and Indeedee with Starting Plains and Giant Cape, like fits the bill. Like, you're living hits from virtually anything. So I think it's a very unique deck list, and one that I would definitely recommend, especially for the players that don't want to play the mirror matchups often, right? And that's the thing, is that most of the best decks are seeing play in ranked, whether it's Hydreigon or Suicune or Manectric or whatever. You're going to be hitting a lot of mirror matchups, and I think Darktina Darkrai, what's really nice here is that if you play this in ranked, it's not going to be a lot of mirror matchups. Probably not. And I think that's a big reason why I wanted to highlight it. And like I said, it's been doing very well this week. Next up is Charizard. I think that Charizard's been a little bit slept on. Now, the thing about Charizard is that it did not appreciate a lot of the Oricorio decks running around. And early this season, Lightning was extremely popular. Lightning is still extremely popular. But one thing I'm noticing is less and less Oricorio in those Manectric / Lightning type decks, whether it's Bellibolt or Manectric. You are still going to see Magnezone Oricorio a little bit, but that's a deck that's really fallen off pretty dramatically for decks in favor, people in favor of playing Manectric. And so since Manectric's not playing a lot of Oricorio, I actually really, really like Charizard. And I think that it's incredibly well positioned. Again, so many Mega Pokemon decks in the metagame. Now, Charizard will struggle a little bit into those decks that, of course, don't play Mega Pokemon like Suicune. And again, Hydreigon can be a little bit iffy, but I actually like Charizard into Hydreigon a little bit more than you might think. This is just a really quality deck. way more consistent than Charizard decks really have ever been. I think that's kind of the big question. I think a lot of people are going to ask me maybe in the comments this week about Hydreigon. It's a weird thing because I think at the top of, ranked battles at the very, very top, Hydreigon has been doing well for some of those top players. But when you take a look at the online tournament metagame throughout this week, Hydreigon has really been struggling. I think that it's being counterplayed more than like any other deck right now, and it loses to Suicune. So we're not actually going to include Hydreigon in today's video. I just don't even recommend it for like the vast majority of people playing ranked. But Charizard going to be a very volatile deck. It's going to be something that just wins games, loses games, but even though it's very matchup dependent, it's very consistent, and that means that sometimes you're going to go on big win streaks, and I do think that Charizard is a nice kind of win streak deck. Again, very dependent on the matchups, but honestly, Charizard X and Charizard Y, when you put them together, you can kind of beat anything in the game. We are playing Pokemon Center Lady. We're playing we're playing Sabrina and Cyrus, double Flame Patch as normal, and then the Rocky Helmet. So this list isn't too different, but I don't think it really needs to be that different, especially since we don't have that much Oricorio going around right now. I think Charizard is a really good choice. And whenever there's not a lot of Oricorio, Charizard and really all Fire-type decks are something to keep your eye on. So shout out to Charizard. I honestly would recommend it. Been one of the more successful decks in online tournaments this week as well. Its win rate has been very, very impressive. The next couple of decks we're going to take a look at from a win rate perspective have been sort of at the very, very top. Or actually, all three of these decks that we're covering at the beginning have had the highest average win rate this season, or this week rather, in online tournaments. And that typically is a pretty good reflection of the ranked metagame. Next up is going to be Darkrai. That's right, just Darkrai. So I don't even know. Basically, I don't know what we call this deck list, but this is Bad Dreams Darkrai with Darkrai EX and Absol. This is all about like ping damage. It's a control type deck. It is a sleep scam deck, but it's honestly been probably throughout the last 4 or 5 days the best deck in online tournaments, and it's something that I think will translate very well into ranked battles. Bad Dreams Darkrai, Igglybuff with Rocky Helmet, starting planes. It's all just absolutely incredible. This is one of those unique decks that I think just has like everything going for it. And what's crazy is when you take a look at this deck, you might think, well, a lot of our leadoffs are not like Pokemon we don't really want in the active. So again, that's why we're playing 2 copies of Leaf, but this whole thing is way more consistent than you might think it is. Starting planes is absolutely incredible with this deck list. Gives all your Pokemon extra HP. Igglybuff, Rocky Helmet, Bad Dreams. It's an absolutely insane deck list. I mean, this deck has been absolutely tearing through the competition. Every tournament that I've taken a look at so far this week, it's been performing extremely, extremely well. I think that the sleep scam stuff is very relevant. I think we will talk about Altaria at some point later in this video, because I still think the Altaria version is pretty good. But as far as the sleep scam, Bad Dream stuff goes, this seems to be like the #1, like top dog right now. And I find that to be kind of interesting, like these sort of dark type Pokemon, and especially the Igglybuff Darkrai stuff finds its way into so many different decks, but this seems to be the most successful version right now. And again, it's kind of like a Dark Greninja deck without Greninja. You can play Dark Greninja because that's also a pretty successful deck right now. But I think, honestly, out of all of the decks that you could possibly play right now in tournaments or in ranked seasons, I think this is going to be my #1 pick currently right now, which might be a surprise to some people, maybe not. But I think it's extremely good, and I just have to recommend it. I'm going to take a little Diet Coke sip real quick. Hold on. One of those numbers. No editing. Okay. Anyway, this is honestly, this was my pick right now. And if you're not playing this, honestly, I'm just going to play Manectric. Manectric is the other most successful deck. I think the last like 2 or 3 somewhat large tournaments this week, Manectric has won all of them. And I think honestly, it just comes down to speed, pacing, and consistency. And those are things that Manectric does just kind of better than any other deck. It's kind of interesting, right? I don't know if we've ever seen a deck be this consistent in terms of just always doing what it wants to do, but at the same time, being super fast-paced. It really lends itself to being a deck that is just extraordinarily well-positioned in the metagame. I get whether you're going up against any of the Fire-type decks, the Sleep decks with PCL in there with Rocky Helmet, or if you're going up against Suicune, this is always the deck that does well into Suicune because of the Lightning typing. I just really like it. And I think it kind of just comes down to the fact that Manectric deals 80 damage. And, if you do get this thing out on turn 2, then you're kind of just going to KO like a basic Pokemon. And if you can't take a KO on turn 2, the game is kind of like effectively over, because then you're hitting for 110, and then 110 and another 110 is just going to take KOs. And even if you lead Zeraora, you're doing totally fine. I used to love to play Elemental Switch in this deck, but I understand why people don't. Mega Manectric does have free retreat. And because it has free retreat, you can effectively kind of just like set it up on the bench and then use Electric Generator an attack with Zero Aura, or like vice versa. You know what I mean? So it's very easy to get an attack off on turn 2, whether it is Manectric or Zero Aura, because no matter what, like it's going to happen, no matter which permutation, lead off Pokemon you have here. The free retreat for Manectric is absolutely incredible. Like it really is just one of the better Pokemon in the entire game. And I think a lot of people slept on Manectric. I don't know. It did win the first tournament of the season, and then Hydreigon won, and then Sleep Altaria won. And those seem to be somewhat of the most popular decks this season. Suicune struggled. A lot of people are playing Suicune, a lot of people playing Hydreigon, but from a win rate perspective, they haven't been that phenomenal. I will say that of every single deck throughout this entire season, Manectric is the #1 highest win rate deck, not only just recently, but cumulatively throughout this entire season. And I think that speaks volumes just to like the sheer consistency that this deck has. It's got everything going for it. It really is phenomenal. And it's super simple. That's what's crazy about this deck. It's just so straightforward, so simple, so consistent. Training area is going to buff this thing to 90 and then 120 and then I think 150, or yeah, which is just crazy. Like it's a lot of damage, just super fast paced. 180 is a good amount of HP as well. Yeah, I just really like it. This is a version just going maximum like pacing and aggression with Rocky Helmets. And I honestly kind of think that's the way to go. This Manectric is honestly incredibly good. The promo Electrike, is really good because it's just a guaranteed 30 damage. And yes, you deal 10 damage to yourself, but being able to go turn 130 on a baby Pokemon like is a dramatic difference. It's a really, really big deal. Yeah, I got nothing else to say about this deck other than that, my takeaway, if you have any takeaway from this video and throughout this entire season, it's that Lightning right now with Manectric just is better. It's just generally better than everything else. And you are going to hit those games where like, sure, you need more damage and you don't have it, or you need more HP, you don't have it. Manectric doesn't have like only good matchups, but it also doesn't flip coins. It's not RNG. It's just a very straightforward, consistent deck. And I think from an average win rate perspective, if you play this deck, it's simple to play as well. If you play this deck like thousands of games, like you're just going to climb. You're going to climb and you're going to climb. This to me is the #1 deck of this entire season so far. Next up is Bad Dreams Altaria. I still think this deck is a little bit suspect, but it is like an inherent RNG deck, right? And I think that throughout the future of Pokemon Pocket, whether it's, the remainder of this season or next season's, this is a deck that people are going to play because sometimes you just can't beat it. Like that's what kind of comes down to this deck list. It's sort of replaced Greninja Altaria in a lot of ways, a lot more consistent than Greninja Altaria, but still kind of has that high roll potential. Even with so many decks playing Pokemon Center Lady and everything, this is still like one of the #1 decks in the entire game. And the Mars inclusion, I absolutely love. I love seeing Mars in the deck. And now we're playing Starting Plains. Yeah, we are just straight up playing Starting Plains because that 50 HP Iggly buff is built different. It's a ridiculous deck. I think Altaria, there's got to be something dramatic to happen to the metagame for Mega Altaria to stop seeing play. This Pokemon is just like Manectric in the fact that it's super consistent and just super strong. And you might be like, well, why is Manectric so good? Manectric's good because it has access to certain things because it's lightning type. You have E-Generator, you have the 30 damage Electrike promo card, and then of course you have Zero Aura. Like those are things that just Altaria doesn't have. And you are kind of bottlenecked a little bit with the double lightning or double psychic energy and the attack cost. So your options are somewhat limited. Chingling, to me, it's a little bit disappointing this season that we're seeing less and less Chingling. It is still prominent. Like people still play Chingling Altaria. People still playing Chingling in Dark Greninja, but they really aren't as effective as you would want. And it's crazy because even though there's not a lot of Chingling, Hydreigon still isn't even doing that well, which is just so hilarious to me. But anyway, yeah, Sleep Altaria, nothing really else to say about it here other than the Starting Plains deck. You're going to see that in basically every Bad Dreams deck. And then Lucky Ice Pop, because that's where we're at. That's where we're at in Pokemon Pocket, playing Bad Dreams, coin flip sleep decks with Lucky Ice Pops. Like that's the meta. That's what people are doing. And you got to be ready for it. You got to be able to deal with it. Next up is Suicune Chien-Pao, and I think this is probably going to be the most popular deck of this ranked season. They'll likely put out the results, but in the last season, this deck saw a ton of play. I think it was the #1 most played deck, and I think it will always be. And that's the thing, is like ranked for whatever the reason, we'll always have, especially in the lower ranks, just have people playing like whatever kind of general deck, like the default deck in Pokemon Pocket. And I think that the default deck is still Suicune. In a weird way. This is what most people are going to be playing. It is incredibly strong, although it doesn't have great matchups into certain things. And I think Manectric being well positioned against this deck kind of makes it a little bit awkward. But at the same time, I mean, I have to recommend it because it's so strong. Yeah, like it is the most played deck this season, and it will be for the remainder of the season and probably into next season. I don't know possibly what could happen to make Suicune not be the most played Pokemon every season. I think it just will be forever. And I think Suicune decks will just continue to evolve. I gotta somewhat recommend Suicune because I think it's a good deck. I mean, it's a really good deck. It's just that, there's a lot of decks that, make their living being strong into this deck specifically. And that kind of makes it a little bit awkward, Anyway. Suicune Chien-Pao. Nothing's different here either. Like this is, we're playing starting planes, one boat, double cape here, just piling on the HP, drawing a ton of cards. The issue with, I think, Baxcalibur and Suicune, the reason why I don't love this, even as opposed to like Greninja and Suicune decks, was because like this deck has a little bit too much going in the early game sometimes. Like it does have that rare candy high roll potential where even if it goes first, you can attack turn 2 with Suicune and then it just feels bad, It really does. You're like, oh, all right, okay. And then like if they do get that Baxcalibur turn 2, like they're gonna get the Suicune going, and then on the next turn they're gonna end up getting Chien-Pao going, and it can be a little bit tough. So that's oftentimes what I notice about this deck is even though you don't think at first glance you need that Baxcalibur on turn 2, half of the games, if you do get it, it's gonna be the reason why you win games, which is, it doesn't feel great. Like that's the thing about Suicune, it just doesn't feel great to play against when they do get that turn 2 rare candy Baxcalibur. All right, lastly is going to be the weekly wild card. This is, it's not like anything too crazy, but the weekly wild card for this week is going to be Blaziken. That's right. I actually think Blaziken slept on. I think that just whatever is going on in the meta right now, Blaziken just does well. You wouldn't think this deck does well in a Suicune, but it does. I think the Furfrou Heatmor tech with Cyrus and Sabrina, this is just one of the most slept on decks in the entire game. I wouldn't say that this is, like a secret deck that is like #1 in the game right now, but out of anything you could be playing, I think this is probably the most disrespected deck in the entire game. And I understand because Charizard is so popular and it's so good, but Blaziken is absolutely incredible. Half of the time, if you do draw Lily and you get that Lily on a Mega Blaziken, like the game is over. Like most decks don't really have anything to do with that. It's a ton of damage. It's just a really strong deck. You have basically every win condition you could possibly think of. You have ways to deal with Oricorio, even though it's not seeing that much play. But yeah, Tongue Whip, Heatmor into Cyrus, or even Furfrou lead with Rocky Helmet is just going to win games. Furfrou is a very, very good lead into the Sleep Scam decks because it just doesn't really take much damage. And then with Rocky Helmet, and if you break out of sleep, you're just going to be able to KO the Iggly buffs. And then from there, you can just kind of cruise with Blaziken. So against the Bad Dream decks, I actually really like this list. And I think Blaziken is massively, massively underrated. Every now and then, I like to remind people that Blaziken is a good deck because I feel bad that it doesn't see nearly as much play as things like Altaria or Absol does, and it was one of the original big 3 Mega Pokemon. I still think it's very good. I would recommend Blaziken, and I would recommend Charizard. I know for some players that maybe don't, like maybe some people just want to play Blaziken, I don't know. And if you do, I think that this is going to be a really strong deck for you. I think it's going to be a really good pick. So that's why it's my wild card. It's my wild card because I think it's just underrated, and I wanted to show Blaziken some love this week. All right, guys, that's the video. Like I said, it's going to be a quick one. I think that right now Pokemon Pocket's in a weird spot. I give a big shout out to everybody that's watching this video that competes in the weekly, PMPT tournament series. I still love playing Pokemon Pocket, covering it. This month and this season in particular has been, definitely a little bit of a strange thing, right? With rank delayed, with Pokemon Champions coming out, it definitely feels like Pokemon Pocket is kind of being put to the wayside a little bit, especially since so many content creators are kind of just moving to Pokemon Champions. But, that's the trend, right? You go where like the viewership is, and for me, I just enjoy Pokemon Champions, so, that was a fun game, and it makes sense for me to make videos on it. But at the same time, like, I still want Pokemon Pocket to thrive. I still want it to be a fun game, and even though, this season is starting to feel a little bit stale, and, we have another week of grinding like this ranked season, I really think that Pokemon Pocket has a future, and I just want to, give a big thanks to everybody in the Pocket Mads community who's been here and tuning into the videos and playing in the tournaments. Like, it really is something that I'm still very proud of, and something I'm very happy about. I know I've seen some comments saying that, we're kind of carrying the competitive scene for Pokemon Pocket. And, I don't want that to be the case. I want, a lot of people to play this game, and I want it to continue to be fun. And I think it probably will be. I'm really excited about maybe what this next set coming out is. I think that it has a ton of potential. And, even though things seem down a little bit for Pokemon Pocket, I think once this new set releases, it's going to revitalize the game a little bit, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We also have some quality of life features that are coming out soon. So yeah, I talked about it previously, but I'm going to continue to do, 2 or 3 videos a week on both the Champion Mads and Pocket Mads channels. I just want to do both, and I think the diversity is fun for me. I get burnt out sometimes doing the same type of videos. I like to cover Pokemon Pocket because that's kind of what we do is we cover it, and I don't think it's ever healthy to play only one game for too much. You should play other games, and I think Pokemon Champions is a really fun deviation, and it's a great way to compete, and the games are very different. I will say Pokemon Champions has pretty much as much RNG as Pocket does, which you wouldn't think, but it really does crazy. It's crazy how much RNG is in competitive Pokemon. Anyway, shout out to Pokemon Pocket. Still love it. Still love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning into the channel. And stay tuned. Like I said, this week's going to be, it's going to be a little bit of a low week, and I understand it's at the end of the season, but the Invitational is coming up. That's going to be a ton of fun. Tune into the PMPT live stream this weekend with Jay on the casting table. He does an incredible job. Shout out to him. And yeah, guys, we're just doing it. We're just having a good time. Pokemon Pocket's been out for so long. Honestly, anybody that's here right now is here because they like Pokemon Pocket or they like following Pokemon Pocket. And that's what I'm here for as well. And I think that's totally fine. I don't need 100,000 people watching our videos. I do it because I like doing it. Anyway, that's my tangent. Sorry for the long outro there. But anyway, peace out, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later. And yeah. Bye.